forward. Gift acceptance policies also help define who does what. A very practical need. It also is important to understand who does what in the actual formulation and updating and implementation of the gift acceptance policy itself. Again, the key informant interviews were the primary source for this perspective, but it was the opinion of the vast majority of those who expressed one that the professionals, the fundraising professionals, should draft the policy. The board or volunteer leaders should accept or reject it, and then outside legal professionals need to be brought in for oversight and to settle any disputes or conflicts that may arise during the process or during the application of the gift acceptance policy. Gift acceptance policies are valuable fundraising tools. A well-conceived gift acceptance policy can provide donors with giving options they may not have considered in the past. Think of it as a menu for, especially in the case of planned giving. If a donor is familiar with your organization's gift acceptance policy, whether it's posted on your website or it's provided in literature or other materials during a visit, for example, it's not only instructive for the donor about how transparent and how ethical and how well run your organization is with respect to its fiduciary responsibilities, but it also provides a very useful suite of options that they may or may not be aware of as a donor or potential donor. The policies illustrate institutional values and dedication to transparency and ethical practices, especially in an increasingly tight fundraising environment. This is something that can differentiate one organization from another. An organization that's perceived by donors and prospective donors as being well run and being one that practices good stewardship and good financial practice, if it gets down to it, that may make the difference between one organization getting a gift or grant versus another. And my personal favorite is potential problems are avoided before they become headaches. It's far better from a fundraising professional's standpoint, in my opinion, to deal with a problem before it exists and come up with a solution to that problem before you're confronted with it in reality. So that way, when it does present itself, you have guidance, you've already thought out how you're going to deal with it. Ethics in fundraising are intimately tied to gift acceptance policies. Crafted policies clearly demonstrate organizational commitment to ethics, donor rights and responsibilities are defined, and organizational practices and obligations are understood, again, in advance of receiving or rejecting a potential gift. The methodology of the research for the project demonstrating mastery, I used three methodologies: literature review, a survey of chief development officers of Minnesota private colleges and universities, and key informant interviews. The literature review was conducted online. I used research databases, library resources, publications, journals, periodicals. I made extensive use of the Association of Fundraising Professionals Resource Center and the Council for Advancement and Support of Education. They have a wealth of materials available. Highly recommend them. The survey was a written survey as opposed to online. It was distributed to development professionals at each of Minnesota's 17 private colleges and universities. It was used to determine the number of institutions with policies in place at the time the survey was taken, and to determine the content of those policies and the perceived value of those policies among the professional fundraisers. The key informant interviews were conducted among about a dozen individuals. These are people who have served as board members of international professional fundraising organizations. They're identified as industry leaders, educators, presenters, and they have established careers in fundraising. Findings of the literature review. Again, at the time during which the research was conducted, it was very clear that gift acceptance policies are considered an important component of governance and fiscal management for nonprofit organizations. Fundraising professionals are at a disadvantage without a written gift acceptance policy, and consistency regarding individual components of gift acceptance policies will be described a little bit later on. There was a very clearly defined set of core elements that were consistent throughout the research, and these are the common elements. a clear description of gifts that are acceptable by an organization. It seems self-evident, but obviously that's a major component. It is common that they are very useful in donor education and cultivation, that there's a long history of such policies, and they are important illustrations of ethical practice and helpful in managing relationships with donors. The survey findings. 16 surveys were sent. One organization, it was originally going to be 17, and one organization didn't participate in any way. 7 responses were received. That's a 43% response rate. 85% of respondents have policies in place. That's higher than I anticipated. So I think that's a very positive finding. Primary use is to determine the acceptability of individual gifts, a very practical use of the document. And again, 85% of those responding consider their policies to be very important. And further, they use them on a regular basis. These are not the sort of things that so many of us have seen that gather dust on a shelf somewhere.